confused with Queen Square. During the day, King's Cross, known as the Cross to locals, is a bustling cosmopolitan area filled with restaurants, cafes, bistros, shops, hotels. But at night, however, it changes its character somewhat and is Sydney's red light district, where just about every adult entertainment can be found. Whether this gives King's Cross its unique feel or detracts from it is purely a case of personal choice. It is, however, an amazing experience. If strip clubs are not your scene, it should be remembered that King's Cross also houses some far more conventional nightclubs for just a good night out. It's also here in Darlinghurst Road that we find one of Sydney's most evocative museums, that of the Jewish Museum. Recording Australian Jewish history from the first settlers, indeed there were 16 Jewish convicts aboard the first fleet ships. It was in this area in the 1790s that Thomas Jones was hanged for murder. His house burnt to the ground and his body left to hang in chains over the ruins as a grim warning to others. Liverpool Street on the right-hand side of George Street is famous for its many Spanish restaurants and tapas bars, which serve great Spanish cuisine and wines. Well worth a visit. As we prepare to turn left into Goulburn Street, you should be able to see across to your right a small church. This church is the Central Baptist Church and opened here in September 1936, replacing the former building that had stood on nearby Bathurst Street since 1836. And it had been the first Baptist church here in Australia. Across to our right, meanwhile, is Scruffy Murphy's Irish Pub, where good times are promised in a lively atmosphere. You can enjoy traditional Irish entertainment, a warm welcome, as well as a pint of genuine Guinness. Another pub here in Goulburn Street is coming up on our left, the Crown Hotel. Known as an authentic Aussie-style pub, it was opened at the turn of the 20th century. If you do come here for a drink later in the day, be sure to be on your best behaviour, as the modern-looking glass-fronted silver building coming up on our left is the home of the Federal Police. So we make our way up Wentworth Avenue towards Oxford Street and Hyde Park. As can be guessed, with so many settlers coming from England, many of our place names have their origins from places in England. Nearby can be found Oxford Street, Liverpool Street, Essex Street, Kent Street and Gloucester Street, to name but just a few. Hyde Park, which can be seen ahead of us, takes its name from the Hyde Park that stands in London. If we look ahead and to the left, we may be able to see a cannon that was taken from the German raiding ship Emden that was sunk by HMAS Sydney on November 9, 1914, near the Cook Islands. If we look through the trees, we should be able to see the Anzac Memorial. The word Anzac comes from the initials of the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, which was the name given to the soldiers who served in the First World War. Opened in 1934, the memorial was originally built to commemorate the missing and dead of World War I. However, with Australia's involvement in later conflicts, particularly World War II, the memorial is now dedicated to all Australia's fighting sons who did not return home, lest we forget. To our left is Hyde Park. It still maintains its oval shape from the times when it was a race course. It was also the site of the first cricket match played here in Sydney between the officers of HMS Calcutta. From here we also get a good view of Sydney Tower, Sydney's tallest building. It was opened in 1981 and is one of the city's most popular attractions. Its well-engineered and extremely stable design enables it to withstand earthquakes and wind speeds that could only be expected here once every 500 years. At 250 metres above the city, the views from the mountains to the beaches are breathtaking. Those wishing to visit Sydney Tower also experience Sky Tour, the largest simulated ride in the Southern Hemisphere, which takes you on an amazing virtual adventure through Australia's cultural history and geography. And a warm welcome to those of you joining or rejoining us here. Now, if you look to the right at the end of the Queen Victoria building, you'll see a wishing well, which incorporates a stone from Killarney Castle, as well as a statue of Queen Victoria herself.
The statue used to stand outside the Irish Parliament. Removed in 1947, it spent the next 35 years laying forgotten about in a small Irish village. However, when Sydney was looking for a statue suitable to be placed here, it was generously donated and has stood here since its restoration in the 1980s. Slightly ahead of us and to our right we can see the Sydney Town Hall, which was opened in 1874. It's one of Sydney's most elegant buildings, and some say this is because each designer tried to outdo its predecessor. Since its opening, the steps in front have become one of Sydney's favourite meeting points. An interesting story originates from the carved lions heads, which you may be able to see on the facade of the building. One of these, just to the north of the main entrance facing George Street, has one eye closed. Now the reason for this oddity goes back to when the stonemasons were carving the heads, and the headstone mason, being a stickler for every lion, used to close one eye. However, he missed this rather clever joke until after the building had actually opened. We're now approaching Sydney and Bondi Explorers Stop, where you should alight if you want to visit the Sydney Town Hall and St Andrew's Cathedral. As we move further along George Street, we leave the shopping precinct. If we look ahead and to our right, we can see the shopping arcade known as the Queen Victoria Building. Housing over 180 shops, cafes and restaurants, it's easy to see why the French designer Pierre Cardin called it the most beautiful shopping centre in the world. It was, however, originally a produce market that was completed in 1898 and was all but derelict by 1920. It was threatened with demolition during the 60s and 70s, but fortunately it survived, and the decision was taken to refurbish it at a cost of over $75 million. If you would like to visit the Queen Victoria Building or Sydney Tower and Sky Tour, then this is your chance at our stop here in George Street. If you're leaving us, then please make sure you have all your belongings, and please keep your tickets safely stashed to ensure you remain seated. To our left you'll see Martin Place. This pedestrian area is home to Sydney's main post office as well as its cenotaph, which we can see in the middle of the pavement and often surrounded by flowers. This commemorates Australia's war dead. Would easily support a town of some 25,000 people. Inside, are nearly 1,000 rooms, some of which are oddly shaped because of the building's angular design. If you get a chance, it's a thrilling experience to see a show here, or if that's impossible, dinner at the Bennelong restaurant. It will be, believe me, an unforgettable night.